National Electrical Code Article 384.4 states that where raceways are required to be laid underground, they shall be embedded in concrete with a minimum cover of 2 inches, which is 50.8 millimeters. Article 384.4b states where raceways are exposed, they shall be securely fastened in place. Article 353.3a states that where installed on a building floor, conduit or tubing containing electrical conductors and cables shall be located in a trench, a raceway, or embedded in the floor. Article 353.3 ATWO provides an exception: surface-mounted raceways shall be permitted where the conditions of use make it impractical to use a concealed raceway, for instance, where large numbers of outlets are to be supplied. The Americans with Disabilities Act does not specifically address exposed floor-mounted raceways. However, it does require that all public spaces be accessible to people with disabilities, which may include avoiding potential tripping hazards. Old-style floor raceways that poke through from below are generally still legal, as long as they meet the NEC requirements for exposed raceways. Floor pocket outlets are modern, EDA-compliant alternatives to floor raceways. These outlets are flush with the floor surface, eliminating tripping hazards. Exposed floor-mounted raceways are generally permitted by the NEC, but their use should be carefully considered in office environments where accessibility is a concern. Floor pocket outlets offer an ADA-compliant option for providing electrical outlets in such areas. To elaborate on the National Electrical Code requirements, firstly, Article 384 focuses on fixed industrial floor boxes, detailing the installation requirements when these boxes and their associated raceways are placed underground or exposed. The 2-inch, which is 50.8 mm, concrete cover requirement for underground raceways is in place to protect the raceways from physical damage, such as from heavy loads or impacts, and to prevent moisture ingress that could lead to corrosion or electrical faults. The requirement for secure fastening of exposed raceways is intended to prevent accidental dislodgement or damage, which could create safety hazards or disrupt electrical service. Secondly, Article 353 pertains to raceway systems for electric light and power, outlining the acceptable methods for installing conduits or tubing containing electrical conductors and cables on building floors. The primary method is to conceal these raceways by placing them in a trench, embedding them in the floor, or using a raceway system designed for concealed installation. The exception for surface-mounted raceways acknowledges situations where concealed raceways are impractical, typically due to the need to supply a large number of outlets in an existing building. In such cases, surface-mounted raceways are permitted, provided they are installed in a way that minimizes tripping hazards and protects the conductors and cables from physical damage. Regarding the Americans with Disabilities Act, while it does not explicitly mention floor-mounted raceways, its general requirement for accessibility has significant implications for their use in public spaces. The ADA mandates that public accommodations and commercial facilities be readily accessible to individuals with disabilities, including those who use wheelchairs, walkers, or other mobility aids. This means that potential tripping hazards must be minimized or eliminated. Exposed floor-mounted raceways can pose a significant tripping hazard, especially for individuals with impaired mobility. Therefore, careful consideration must be given to the design and placement of these raceways to ensure compliance with the ADA. One approach is to use low-profile raceways that are flush with the floor surface or to install them in areas that are not typically used by pedestrians. Another option is to use floor pocket outlets, which are flush-mounted outlets that eliminate tripping hazards. These outlets are designed to be recessed into the floor and covered with a hinged lid when not in use. When an outlet is needed, the lid is opened and the plug is inserted. When the outlet is no longer needed, the plug is removed and the lid is closed, creating a smooth, unobstructed surface. All style floor raceways that poke through from below are generally still legal, provided they meet the NEC requirements for exposed raceways. However, these raceways are more likely to pose a tripping hazard and may not be ADA compliant. Therefore, they should be carefully evaluated before being used in public spaces. In conclusion, when deciding whether to use exposed floor-mounted raceways in an office environment, it is important to consider both the NEC requirements and the ADA guidelines. The NEC permits exposed raceways under certain conditions, but the ADA requires that all public spaces be accessible to people with disabilities, which may include avoiding potential tripping hazards. Floor pocket outlets offer an ADA-compliant option for providing electrical outlets in such areas. Additionally, when installing floor-mounted raceways, it is crucial to ensure that they are securely fastened in place and that they do not create a tripping hazard. This may involve using low-profile raceways, installing them in areas that are not typically used by pedestrians, or providing ramps or other means of access for individuals with disabilities. It is also important to consult with a qualified electrical engineer or ADA consultant to ensure that the installation meets all applicable codes and regulations. To ensure compliance with the NEC and ADA, several factors need careful consideration. Firstly, the selection of raceway type is crucial. Options include metal raceways like EMT, IMC, and rigid metal conduit, as well as non-metallic raceways such as PVC and ENT. Each type has different properties regarding durability, fire resistance, and suitability for various environments. The NEC specifies requirements for each type of raceway, including proper support, grounding, and protection from physical damage. Secondly, the installation method must adhere to NEC guidelines. This includes ensuring proper spacing of supports, using appropriate fittings and connectors, and maintaining adequate clearances from other building systems. Exposed raceways must be securely fastened to the floor to prevent movement or displacement, which could create tripping hazards or damage the conductors inside. Thirdly, the design of the electrical system must account for the anticipated load and the number of outlets required. This involves calculating the conductor size based on the load, selecting appropriate overcurrent protection devices, and ensuring that the system is properly grounded. The NEC provides detailed requirements for these aspects of electrical system design. Furthermore, the placement of floor-mounted outlets must be carefully considered to minimize tripping hazards and ensure accessibility. Outlets should be located in areas where they are least likely to be obstructed or create a tripping hazard. Floor pocket outlets, which are flush with the floor surface, are a good option for high-traffic areas. These outlets should be installed according to the manufacturer's instructions and should be properly grounded. In addition to the NEC and ADA, other codes and standards may apply to floor-mounted raceways and outlets, depending on the specific location and application. These may include local building codes, fire codes, and accessibility standards. It is important to consult with local authorities to determine the applicable requirement. In summary, the installation of floor-mounted raceways and outlets in office environments requires careful attention to both the NEC and ADA. By following the guidelines outlined in these codes and standards, it is possible to create a safe, accessible, and code-compliant electrical system. Remember to consult with qualified professionals such as electrical engineers, ADA consultants, and electrical contractors to ensure that the installation meets all applicable requirements. Here are some additional points to consider regarding floor-mounted raceways and ADA compliance. Firstly, the type of flooring material can affect the safety and accessibility of floor-mounted raceways. Smooth, non-slip flooring materials are generally preferred as they reduce the risk of tripping and provide better traction for individuals with mobility impairments. Carpeting can also be used, but it should be low-pile and securely fastened to the floor to prevent tripping hazards. Secondly, the color and contrast of floor-mounted raceways can affect their visibility. Raceways that are the same color as the surrounding floor can be difficult to see, especially for individuals with low vision. Using raceways that are a contrasting color can improve their visibility and reduce the risk of tripping. Thirdly, the maintenance of floor-mounted raceways is important for ensuring their safety and accessibility. Raceways should be regularly inspected for damage, such as cracks, chips, or loose fasteners. Damaged raceways should be repaired or replaced promptly. The area around raceways should be kept clean and free of debris to prevent tripping hazards. Additionally, the use of floor-mounted raceways should be carefully considered in areas where spills or moisture are likely to occur. Water can damage electrical components and create a shock hazard. In such areas, waterproof or water-resistant raceways and outlets should be used. It is also important to ensure that the electrical system is properly grounded to prevent electrical shock. Furthermore, when planning the layout of an office space, it is important to consider the placement of furniture and equipment in relation to floor-mounted raceways. Furniture and equipment should not be placed in a way that obstructs access to outlets or creates a tripping hazard. Cords and cables should be neatly organized and secured to prevent them from becoming tripping hazards. The use of cable management systems, such as cable trays or cord covers, can help to keep cords and cables organized and out of the way. In addition to the technical aspects of floor-mounted raceways and outlets, it is also important to consider the aesthetic aspects. Floor-mounted raceways can be visually unappealing, especially in modern office environments. Therefore, it is important to choose raceways that are aesthetically pleasing and that blend in with the surrounding decor. Floor pocket outlets, which are flush with the floor surface, are a good option for minimizing the visual impact of outlets. Finally, it is important to educate employees and visitors about the presence of floor-mounted raceways and outlets and the potential hazards they pose. Signage can be used to warn people about the presence of raceways and to remind them to be careful when walking in these areas. Employees should be trained on how to use floor-mounted outlets safely and how to report any damage or hazards. By taking these steps, it is possible to minimize the risks associated with floor-mounted raceways and to create a safe and accessible office environment for everyone. Keep in mind that technology changes. It's important to keep up to date with your local and national regulations. This includes any updates to the NEC and EDA.